district?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So those are all the...
So one quick question. So is this also like with televisions, the energy cost with televisions?
With the use of televisions?
Yeah.
I would imagine it's the energy use for the building as a whole. So
Do you know how many televisions are
within the building?
Each school?
I do not. Nope. I think you start to have a gray area of televisions and monitors. A lot of smart boards in our classrooms. I think our use of technology starts to certainly impact that.
Because in the entryway to the district office, there's a television, and it's on, but it's just like a single, kind of just says West Bend School District.
Yep.
But why is it on a HD television that's on when it could be just maybe a poster? If you're looking at your energy costs.
Yep. Understood. Yeah, I understand your point there. It's not atypical that we would use digital signage throughout schools. It's a means of providing regular updated information. There can be district-wide information that's provided. That's not atypical. But with that said, I can't speak to how many of those monitors are in the building. Okay. All right, then with that said, our next goal is to talk through Finance 101. I think it'll take about 20 minutes or so. And I think the intent here is to give you a bit of a snapshot to the district, how the district is financed, and then from any type of capital investment or potential referendum standpoint, what that might look like. So Brian Brewer from Baird has been working with the district for over 20 years. He's worked with the district to the past successful referenda, so he can certainly speak to the history there. And with that said, I'll turn it over to upload here.
Thank you. And the unsuccessful ones too. So how many here tonight have a good working knowledge of school finance in Wisconsin? Some of the key variables to go into it? All right, we got one, maybe two, all right. So this will be a high level. In 20 minutes, you're not gonna walk away saying I can go run a district, but the goal that I had in trying to put together some slides for you is to give you just a broad understanding of where the school district generates revenue in the state formulas, and ultimately ask the question or answer the question, why when you have a large scale capital needs, you're typically seeing that conducted as a community-wide referendum conversation. Because the revenue limit formula that's been in place since the 93-94 school year was intended to limit the growth in school revenue and thereby taxes, and have it focus on operations of the school. And what you'll see as we walk through this, the key inputs are students, so it's called membership or FTE. The reason it's called that and not just enrollment or students is that in the formula it's a 3-year rolling average. So it helps to smooth out the spikes up and down year over year. And then each year up until the last couple of years, there was a per pupil increase amount that adjusted for cost of living adjustments, inflationary expenditures in the operational budget, so that conceptually, the 3-year rolling average of students multiplied by an amount with a cost of living adjustment each year, that allows you to fund your operations. What we've seen in the 24 years since the implementation of the revenue limit formula and that system is that when it was implemented, the districts that in 92-93, just prior, the way it was set up was your budget was frozen, and that became your base revenue limit per pupil or per member. And so districts that had been conservatively budgeting pre-revenue limits started in this process at a lower funding level than districts that maybe had some additional cushion in their budgets. And I'll show you a slide here in a minute that shows that this district was more on the conservative end of that. Like they were fiscally conservative. Their revenues per pupil were lower heading into the formula, which isn't that surprising for this district, for this community, the communities that the district serves. You know, conservative budgeting is a foundation of these communities. So the struggle with that is it doesn't leave a lot of excess in the budget to set dollars aside for larger scale facility improvements. So that then leads to, when that time comes and you've arrived at a solution, and you look at millions of dollars of funding to pay for those projects, it doesn't really fit within the revenue limit itself. And so you then take the ongoing revenues, which is governed by the membership, times the per pupil amount, and then you add on one-time or non-recurring exemptions, which a referendum is an example of. There are two types of referendums in the state. One is an operational funding referendum, where that's just increasing the amount that a district can collect in revenue to pay for operations of the district. Or there's a debt or borrowing referendum, which is, the question is posed, does the community support the district borrowing an amount not to exceed X to pay for public projects that include the list of the projects? So those are the two ways that a district can seek voter approval to exceed the revenue limit caps. There are other ongoing types of exemption. One of the most common is in that operational referendum. You can ask for it as a limited time period, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or in the case of a new facility, often districts will look at the additional staffing or needed to operate that facility and ask for that on a recurring basis. So that would be an example of a recurring exemption. So you multiply your membership times your per pupil, add on any exemptions, one time or recurring, and you arrive at the total revenue limit authority. You notice I keep saying revenue. So the two primary sources of revenue, who knows what, for a school district, what are the two primary sources of revenue for a school district? Local property taxes is one of them.
State aid.
And state aid is the other main source. So as we look at the history of the West Bend School District, this trend data goes back to 04-05. The blue bar on this chart represents West Bend's revenue limit per pupil amount, and the gray bar represents the statewide K-12 average. And so you'll notice all the way through, as I was mentioning at the beginning, because the district was fiscally conservative at the beginning, it was locked in at a lower per pupil funding level relative to other districts across the state. The line here represents that cost of a living adjustment amount in the per pupil that is determined each biennial budget by the state legislature. And you'll see numbers in the 200 to 280 range, 300 in this year. And then you see a sharp decline, and that's the 5.5% pullback that was related to the Act 10 implementation in 10-11, going into 11-12. So for this district, that was about a $413 per student pullback in the revenue limit. So equated to about 5.5% pullback. Year 2 of that biennium, there was a $50 add back. The next biennial budget, there was 2 years of $75. And then the biennial budget we just finished was 0 and 0 on the revenue limit. This biennial budget that was just completed a month ago also is 0 and 0 for 17-18 and 18-19. So what that translates into, when you factor in the 3-year rolling average of membership for the district, which is slightly, it was growing and then has pulled back in the last couple of years. You're currently, as of the 16-17 school year, it was at 6,919 on that membership number. So when you take the membership times the per pupil amount, you see that during those years where there was that extra 200 to 280, you see a growing revenue budget. Then you see the 5.5% pullback here, relatively flat, and then into 16, 17, one of the non-recurring or one-time exemptions is for a declining enrollment. So I showed you on this chart there was some declining enrollment. The formula allows for a 1-year, one-time hold harmless, if you will, of that revenue. It's designed to allow boards to readjust their expenditure budget based on less students in the classroom. Difficulty there is it's not always that the decline in the enrollment happens in one classroom or one building. It's generally spread across buildings, and you're not able to eliminate an entire section or a staff member directly. So that's the things that the school boards wrestle with in balancing the revenue and the expenditures.